Welcome to Contra Gentile, Season 2, Episode number 25.
If you didn't know the form of the heart, what are you reaching up your ass?
I made bruschetta and it's really good.
Truth will essentially just reveal itself to the
Right.
audience.
Did you say that
Yeah.
I'm predisposed to like secretaries?
Quit being a fag.
How's life? How you doing? You have any anecdotes?
Oh, really?
How was your Thanksgiving weekend?
Full of food, and I'm 10 pounds heavier.
Are you really?
No.
I feel like holy shit.
I feel like it. Like I'm still full.
Really?
Yeah.
You're not digesting food?
I guess not fully. Like I haven't got to that point where I'm just like finally feeling actual hungry again.
Oh.
Now it's just like my mouth wants food again, and I just want to eat. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
I'm trying to remember what we did. Yeah, I made food for Alec and I. My mom comes back from Hawaii on Wednesday.
Oh,
Because she's on a widow trip. Yes, she has a widow friend, and there's the one where they heckled the what's his name? What's the guy's name who plays Robert in Everybody Loves Raymond? What's his name? Bobby
yeah.
Garrett? No,
Something like that. I know who you're talking about, though, yeah.
Bobby Garrett.
Yeah.
Something Garrett, I think.
Probably, yeah. I don't know his
Anyways, can I tell you that story? Can I tell you
is-
the story?
Yeah.
It'd be. I mean, my mom's not here, but so they were at. I have to look it up. I don't want to get his name wrong.
Okay. So Robert.
What's his? Is it Bobby Garrett? No.
I thought his name was the same as
No.
the show name.
Robert. It's
Yeah.
not Bobby Garrett. Is it Bobby Garrett Ferguson? Is something from Regular Show? The head.
Oh, really?
I don't. Anyway, everybody
I think it's Robert, his real name.
loves Raymond. Is it Robert something? Brad Garrett.
Brad Garrett. Oh,
Brad
okay.
Garrett is his name. So they go to a comedy show. Go to the comedy show. And I'm trying to remember exactly what they go to they go to see him do stand up. My mom's just not enjoying it. And
It's too racy for him.
I think he wasn't getting enough laughs or something. So he said isn't this funny or something? And my mom yells because they're drinking.
Oh, yeah.
My mom yells, well, you're no Raymond in the middle of the concert hall. And
That's hilarious.
and then she's like, well, at least I like you're tall. I like that you're tall. And then he starts heckling them back. And then my mom's widow friend yells, and it stops him in his tracks. She goes, our husbands are dead. You have to be nice to us. Really loud in the middle of the concert hall.
When was this?
This
Recently?
was years ago. I mean, a few years ago.
Yeah, because he's not dead for that long.
2018. He's not dead. Is he dead?
You said your dad
Oh,
wasn't dead
yeah.
for that long.
This would have been 2018, maybe?
Yeah.
3 years
Just a
ago?
few years ago, yeah.
You have to be nice to us. Our husbands are dead. To Brad Garrett. And they had this killer own on a comedian heckling him. And then the entire time my mom's room was blaming her for starting it.
Oh,
I can't believe you did that.
that is awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you have to be nice to us. Our husbands are dead. It's the way to get it. Oh, we don't have wine yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which
So
one is this thing?
tonight's wine is a Gascon Malbec.
Oh, yes. I want a Malbec.
Don Miguel Gascon. It's a 2019. Don Miguel Gascon, founded in 1884, is the oldest continually operating wine in Mendoza. I don't know. It's stupid. I'm really out of it today. This is our first time recording on a weeknight in at least 100 years. So I'm both in The Office Killed Me today and also very bored. And
Cheers.
1 second. You did the thing again. Cheers.
Oh, yeah. I actually like it.
It's good. Yeah, we haven't had wine in 3 weeks?
Yeah, it's been 3 weeks, I think.
Because we had wine for the Michael Knowles one, and then no,
No, we had
The gin and tonics.
I think that's the first time I had the gin and tonic was.
Okay, I need some of those. All right, back to form. Return to form.
Yeah.
For now. I didn't want to carry the ice for gin and tonics.
Yeah. Those ones, I just drink it too fast because it's refreshing. And so I just, right now, I'll be going like this already. And I don't feel anything with it. I don't know why.
You get warm. You get warm and relaxed, but you don't get like.
Yeah. I just want to sleep and just, yeah, it's good.
This is lighter than normal than I'm used to with Malbecs.
Yeah.
Do you just want to get into it, or do we have more banter?
Sure, yeah, we'll just get into it.
So, this week, today, so what are we doing? We're recording Monday night for release in about 13 hours.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to stay up to process the audio and get it ready for release.
Yeah, I probably could take it home with me and just sync it together. Now that
we'll just render it when we're done. The clap. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it takes like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Level the audio and be done. Okay. We are covering The Anatomy of the State by Murray N. Rothbard. Recommended to us by Ace of Slurp Gang podcast.
Oh, really?
When I did that, the poll that got or something. I posted a thing where I wanted people to tell me what they wanted to cover, and I got like a bunch of DMs, and that was one of the ones I got.
Yeah.
And you and I are both markedly not libertarians or anarchists.
Yes, yeah.
So I was interested to kind of tackle a short and brief thing by a well-known libertarian. Is he a libertarian or an anarchist?
I don't know what he is personally. Like,
well, based on this, I mean, it's a very short.
Yeah,
piece. It's like 62 pages.
And what he
printed.
Because apparently I guess he's more of an economist. That's what like Josh was telling me.
Yes, he's an economist.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't read any of his other works, so there's no way for me to determine what he believes. But I will say that according to this text, I think many of if this was the only text you read of him, I don't think you would walk away with it thinking that he's an anarchist.
I don't think so either.
Yeah, nor do I. But again, he might be in his other texts, and so that's. I'll leave that up for people that know him.
Okay, so he's a heterodox economist of the Austrian school.
Yeah.
Do you know what the Austrian school is? I have no idea what that is.
I don't know.
Okay,
yeah.
We are revealing a blind spot of ours.
Yes, yeah.
I've never had any interest in economics.
Yeah.
Really. I think he's
like, what is he? Yeah.
The Wikipedia thing?
Yeah.
Okay, so the Wikipedia blurb. Murray Newton Rothbard was an American heterodox economist of the Austrian school, economic historian, and political theorist. Rothbard was a founder and leading theoretician of anarcho-capitalism and a central figure in the 20th century American libertarian movement. He wrote over 20 books on So I guess he's like a founder of anarcho-capitalism.
Okay, cool.
But it says libertarian.
Yeah.
And I don't know if those aren't the same thing. Maybe because we've always said libertarians are just half-baked anarchists,
right? Yeah, and so I mean, I would probably just say they're probably the same thing. It's a logical end of what libertarianism.
So what So what in my perception?
Yeah,
and we're probably making a lot of people irritated because we have no idea. We're going in kind of raw here.
Yeah.
The difference between libertarians and anarcho-capitalists that I know personally, I don't know. I haven't read all their texts that they reference and stuff. It seems like libertarians are anarcho-capitalists that like the U.S.
Okay.
To me, they just they like the U.S. system better than people who would call themselves anarcho-capitalists. Like they're not willing to.
I see.
They like the Enlightenment, whereas anarcho-capitalists generally don't.
Okay.
I don't know if that's just me being short-sighted or like
that one. Yeah, I don't know.
That's in my experience of the people I know who would call themselves either or.
Yeah.
Generally, libertarians tend to be more pro-American than people who call themselves anarcho-capitalists.
Yeah, I think that's probably definitely fair to say. That they, at least from my encounter too, but I don't know if that's the main distinction between them.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I think that's a feature I've noticed.
Right. Yeah, feature. Yeah, I to me it just seems like the main difference is that libertarians tend not to follow their logic to the end, which would simply be the destruction of government.
No, they're just half-baked anarchists.
Right, yeah. And so I think that's a fair thing to say. I don't even think they would fully disagree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think...
they're anarchists that are not willing to forfeit their love of country or something.
Yes, yeah. Or some kind of order. Even
or that's one of the things keeping them from forfeiting it.
Yes, yeah. The minimalistic order of some kind of constitutional whatever.
Yeah.
But I think in the end. And probably, I guess, holding on to some notion of a good, because it seems like libertarians in general view licentiousness as the good, right? Or
the ability to do whatever you want.
Yeah, to do whatever which they would just simply call freedom, but I do think licentiousness is a more proper term for that, and so they view that as being the good, and then if anything kind of, I guess, stops one from partaking in their licentious behavior, then that is the evil. And so that's the main thing why I think anarchists...
Because I would have thought that anarchists think the same.
I know,
but I think that anarchists have a more... Again, I'm just speaking from my limited experience with people I know.
Yeah.
It tends to seem to me that anarchists have a more coherent and developed concept of goodness and the good and proper moral order.
Yeah.
Because the anarchists I know tend to be a lot more what I would call principled, but I don't necessarily mean like... I don't mean that all the libertarians I know are like degenerates, but like they just tends to be... Anarchists actually don't have as much of the like you do you attitude as libertarians.
Right.
Like, because anarchism is is more coherent, obviously, as we said. It's more developed as an idea.
Yeah.
There tends to be a little bit more developed in their moral philosophy also.
Yeah. Which is weird. I mean, because originally anarchism simply just was nothing. And so I think we've put a label on something and we call it anarchism, which doesn't really relate to the original definition of what it means. But
so what was the original definition? What's the classical definition?
I think the classical definition simply refers to the lack of order.
So does it have to do with the monarch?
Right, yeah.
Arc, anarch.
Yeah.
Not art, not...
Yeah.
What is the...
The etymology?
Yeah, I'm looking it up.
Yeah.
Latin. Is it Latin?
It should be, yeah.
Anarchism.
Or just look up anarchy.
Etymology. I just wanted to see if... Anarchos, without a chief. Arc. So what is... Just for monarchism etymology.
Maybe a one chief.
Yeah, one chief. Word monarchus, one single ruler. Oligarch. Okay, so it's arc it's not monarch. It's arc.
Arc.
Okay.
Yeah, and so anarchy would just complete disorder. There is no ruler. So without a ruler, what then really becomes of it? It seems like the contemporary anarchist wants to put rule back into the idea of the lack of a ruler.
Yeah.
And so what order would that be? And so that's why they probably call themselves anarcho-capitalists, meaning that it is the capitalism that brings order to...
Capitalism without a ruler.
Capitalism, yeah.
Okay.
And
which is interesting because I don't... There is a distinct... or at least in my head when I'm presented with people who aesthetically manifest anarchism versus anarcho-capitalism, there's like it's a totally different kind of person.
Right, yeah.
Like when I think of an actual anarchist, I think of like an Antifa guy.
Right,
but an anarcho-capitalist is like someone much more put together because it's like qualified.
I think because that qualifying part is what brings order to the anarchy. Because if anarchy has no ruler, that means there is no order. And so what brings order to it would be capitalism.
Yeah.
And so having a coherent understanding of capitalism, or at least which I would say that he basically has. He has this idea that there's an exchange of goods and services that is supposed to be the natural state of man, and that government is
an aberration.
Right. Yeah. So yeah.
You want to start just kind of get into it, or?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So he starts with what is or what the state is not.
Yeah, what the state.
He starts with an argument of what people consider the state that's not correct in his view.
Yeah, and so and I think just a few notes before we get to the actual concrete arguments that he makes is that, you know, compared to the other texts that we have read so far, this is the first one that is actually presenting arguments.
Yes, it was so refreshing.
Yeah, it's super refreshing. I'm really happy with this. Whoever is the one that asked us to read it, thank you. You know, they're not giving me bullshit anymore. And so there's actual arguments to dissect and to kind of unpack to see whether they're accurate. And the other thing is the kind of argument he's making are syllogistical. So they're categorical syllogisms, which means that he's arguing in terms of its category and its definitions. And so it's a definitional argument to say this is what this is. And so comprehending that our language correlates with reality, he's trying to say that that some definitions don't correlate with the reality. So what is a more proper definition? And so like the quote here that he wrote, it says, you know, that many consider the state as an institution of social service, apotheosis of society, amenable, though often inefficient, organization for achieving social ends, and almost all regarded as necessary means for achieving the goals of mankind, a means to be arranged against the private sector, and often winning in the competition of resources. And so, in general, he says that this manifests, at least with a contemporary American and Western Europe tradition, as the phrase that we are the government, then, right? And he says that this phrase in itself can be used for basic manipulation that the government tends to do. And so one of the arguments he put, he says, you know, we are the government, and the government incurred debt, therefore we incur debt. And so in some way, when they begin to tax us, they say that it is.
Is that not the thing that Biden said on the campaign trail? Yeah. He said that we are you, we are you, we are the people. I don't remember exactly what the phrase he said was.
Yeah, many people on the left kind of hold that position, right? That we are the government, and so we all. I mean, communism in general has that kind of idea.
Well, it's a government of the people, by the people, for the people.
Yes,
it's if you say that a government is of the people, by the people, and for the people.
Yes,
it's essentially the people.
The people, and I also do think it harkens back to Hobbes and Locke, and so anybody that read Hobbes, remember that he said that the natural state of man is kind of like to steal from each other. And that the only way to curb this behavior is to make a social agreement with one another to say, if I don't steal from you, you don't steal from me, and this is where laws develop and government develops and everything. And so, in essence, Hobbes is saying this too, that we are the government. We are formulating this government. There's a social contract that we formulate.
Or the government is an extension of us.
Or at least that, right? Yeah. And that it is based on some kind of social contract. And Hobbes, you know, you can see the similar things. Even though Hobbes and I mean, John Locke and Hobbes, but even though they disagree in many aspects, you know, Hobbes is Leviathan, he believes in a stronger. But anyways, that I find quite interesting, because this is what he's attacking. He's attacking this worldview, and he's saying essentially that cannot be the case. And so when you put this in any other syllogistical form, you find yourself committing certain fallacies. And so one argument he makes basically says, you know, we are, if we are the government, and then the Jews are a part of us, the government kills the Jews, therefore the Jews kill themselves. And this is kind of the deduction that'll be presented with this. And so this forms sororities. And so when you present it, you know, all WRG, all JRW, all GRK, therefore all JRK, and you break that down further into its syllogistical form, you see that these are valid arguments that one can make if given the idea that we are the government, right? If given that idea, yes, that is a valid conclusion. It's not only valid, but it's unconditionally valid. There is no conditions in which this is invalid. Yeah. And for the listeners, you know, validity simply pertains to the structure, and so there's formal and informal fallacies. And so when something is formally fallacious, then it's invalid. But if it's formally accurate, and then it's valid.
This is literally our first episode.
Yes, yeah. But some of them might not have heard it.
No, a lot of them haven't.
Yeah.
The based pilot.
Yeah.
I really do. His argument as to how, in that ideological framework, one can claim that the Jews killed themselves.
Yeah.
Because what? So if the government is the people, because it is elected by the people. I don't know exactly what the is that the reason that they would
because
claim?
because if you go with a Hobbesian idea that it is a social contract,
So
that we all agreed upon, and then we are the government. Yeah.
The government was elected by the people.
Mm-hmm.
The government that was elected killed the Jews. Therefore, the Jews, being part of the people, killed themselves because they are the government.
Yeah. And it's a simple deduction.
Well, he was saying the state, and I think
he's a state. Yes,
I think it's important that we use his language because I'd like
state.
to discuss the words he uses later. But it's the state.
The state, yeah.
The state is the Jews, in being governed by the state, are the state because the state was elected.
Yes, yeah.
Which I don't think any rational person would claim. But,
but again, many do because if you look at Hobbes and John Locke,
it's really hard for me to wrap my head around how one might.
Yeah. Because when you look at,
is it possible to what's the word? Abide by social contracts you are not conscious of agreeing to?
Well, I think this is what his argument is saying. He says you can't, and this is what he's saying, right?
Social contracts only matter if you agree to them.
Yeah, only if you agree.
Which I
to
think
them.
is just kind of a very basic anarchist position, or they would say anarchist. I think it's generally that's a feature of many political ideologies, but
and so a lot of this just has to do with the Age of Enlightenment, where they truly believed that they're formulating a government that was or the state that was not formed as simply I guess the power and dominion over people that you really see with monarchies and whatnot. And what he's saying, I think very accurately, is that that's never happened. Yeah. It isn't as if we actually made a state that is part of the people, rather the state still exists external from the people. Because the idea that the state can exist part of the people would, again, lead to fallacies such as the idea that the Jews kill themselves. Yeah. Or the idea that we all incur debt, or the idea of whatever argument you present on it.
Because that's one you could say that if you're... Well, here, this might be an interesting experiment. We don't have an anarchist here to ask.
Yeah.
If you're... Like what we did in To Live last week. If your son incurred debt, have you incurred debt? Have you incurred responsibility to pay your son's debt? Because it's a Platonic argument that the state is an extension of the family.
Exactly right.
So I don't know how the Platonic idea.
And this kind of even goes back to some of the discussions prior to even with sexual persona and everything, the Renaissance period. And so many of the Protestant Anglo-Renaissance was hearkening back to paganism, was hearkening back to ancient Greece. And so they were adopting many of those ideas that the state is an extension of the family. And so Hobbes and Locke and the founding fathers, they all have this idea that the state is not a force that is against the people. Rather, the state is the social contract that the people have agreed upon. And we have this constitution, and this constitution is one that kind of defines, I guess, the boundaries of the government, and defines the boundaries of the state and how we ought to behave, and how the state ought to relate to us. Yeah. And so I think most, if not all, Western and contemporary Eastern states kind of have that similar idea. It is the idea that the state is a mutual contract, a social contract that we agreed upon, and that even if we ourselves didn't sign the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution, or we didn't vote in any kind of I guess addendums or whatever to the Constitution,
that somehow by nature of our lineage
by nature of simply existing in it, right? Because then the state, as Socrates argues, the state is the one that allows you to go to school, that allows you to buy clothes, to get work.
Is that true in any sense?
I think it is. I mean, you can't.
It's obviously true.
Yeah, you can't eradicate the state from that, because we're functioning within the laws that come prior to us, and then within that laws we grow, right? We get married, we You get a job, we get a career, we start a business, and it's all within the confines of what the state allows us to do. And so we are partaking in it.
Yeah.
But whether it is an agreed upon thing, that's where I think he's making a proper point.
Yeah.
Where, okay, just because we were thrown into this reality, and because we're partaking within the structures of what the state allows us to partake in, it doesn't mean that we necessarily made an agreement on it. We are simply existing within the, I guess, rules, boundaries, and limitations that were given to us by people prior to us.
Yeah.
And that's really it. And so just by virtue of acting in the society, I don't know whether that legitimizes the idea that we have then agreed upon the social contract.
Or do we owe the state anything?
Or that we owe the state anything, right? I think owing them makes a little more sense.
Yeah.
But not that we agreed on it. I don't think my action of getting a job or starting a business or going to school is me agreeing on the social contract. I think it is merely me existing within the boundaries that the society allows me to exist. But I never agreed upon anything.
But in operating within its boundaries, you respect it, at least. You respect the boundaries.
Yes.
At least
to go through
to a certain degree. Yeah.
Yeah. But I do think what he presents first and foremost is that we cannot equivocate our consent or our existence with a state. Is that the state exists apart of us, or apart from us. And I do think that's an important aspect, that we are not our government, we are not the state, we are not the one that are actually pulling any strings. It exists prior to us, for the most part, and it exists external from us. And so we're simply playing the game in which it allows us to play. And I think that that's a much more accurate depiction of what's going on, not so much that we are part of the government. And so many leftist ideology kind of adopts the idea that we're the government, so that's why they trust them, right? If the government says get a vaccine, they're going to get a vaccine. If the government says this, they're going to do that because they trust them as being an actual.
Well, it's common
entity.
for progressives / Democrat loyalists, we could maybe say, to have like pictures of Michelle Obama on their fridge,
right?
Or like Obama or Biden.
Yeah, but
it's literally an extension of the fact that it's your
it
family.
is.
It's like you literally have a photo
right
of Bill Clinton on your fridge amongst the pictures of your family.
Yeah.
As if
but
is.
But the people on the right are not immune to that either. I've went to so many Republican homes where they have images of Reagan.
Yeah.
They have him right there when you enter the door, like a little shrine, and they have like something that he wrote them, like he wrote him a letter and has a signature on it. I think.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah, I've been to like 4 different. I've honestly seen that more with conservatives than Democrats, actually.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's opposite for me. But
is it?
Anecdotally, but I mean, it's true of both.
It is, yeah. And
again, as we said, was it last time we said that both sides were as ideologically possessed as
yes.
the other?
Yeah. And they are. But I think because both of them are kind of functioning within the confines. They're functioning within a confine, this Hobbesian and Lockean view that the government or the state in some way is an extension of us, like we are an actual part of it. And I think his showing the fallacies in there is pretty much indisputable. I don't think one can really. I mean, even if one disagrees with it, then you have to really say, what do you disagree with it?
Yeah.
Because you can't just say I don't like it. Is it he just showed you?
So logically prove how we are the state.
Yeah, exactly. Because he already shown that.
Walk me through that.
He logically shown that you're not part of the state. That you're not the state. That there is a separation.
In 10 pages? I mean,
yes,
it's very, very quick. That
it is. That. Yeah. And even I think the first part of the chapter is only like 1 or 2 pages.
I know.
Yeah, because I read it in the Kindle, And there was like 2 pages, but normally the fonts are larger, or whatever. So it's a very briefly, and I think he, he said something in there like, one would not think that this kind of things need to be belated, like this actually needs to be spelled out, but he says, but it actually does, because there's so many people that actually believe that the state is an extension of us, that the state is the will of the people, that we elect these people, and so most people in the Western world think that they believe that that we elected the government and the government represents the people. And he's saying that's nonsense. There is no actual representation. The only thing that's really happening is that we are partaking in a system, and that partaking in that system is that there's a structure of laws and limitations of how we are to behave, but we're not part of that. Obviously, they're kind of imposing their force onto us. And so, and that was like the first chapter. Now, when I first was listening to the ebook, I just had to stop doing what I was doing, because I was like, that's an actual coherent argument. This is something that we could discuss, and we could actually show, and we could write it out and spell it out how accurate and how correct he is deductively in this. And again, I think it's indisputable. And so the part that even grabbed my attention more was when he in the chapter of what the state is, what is the second one, what the actual state is, and he is the first person. When did he write this shit?
1974.
Okay, yeah.
I can look it up while you're talking.
Of the contemporary person that actually uses the term natural law in the Aristotelian Thomistic sense. Yeah. That shocked the fuck out of me. I did too. I wasn't expecting that. Like,
was that the chapter where he attacked like scientism and stuff?
No, that was after that. No, this was before that.
Okay, but still.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, his understanding of the natural law is an actual classical understanding, not the Newtonian understanding, and so he makes a teleological argument in this chapter. He says that the actual how can you put it, the teleology of the social animal, the teleology of the man living socially, is the production of goods and services and the peaceful transaction of the goods and services with somebody else. He says this is the teleology. I mean, he doesn't use the word, but obviously he uses the word natural law, which is saying, okay, the natural law is teleological. And so, and then he says that the other state of man, so if that is the natural state of man, if you're going to use an Aristotelian Thomistic sense, that is the good state of man, because it is fulfilling its reality.
Do you agree with his assessment? Of his teleology that he described?
I think if you're going to say
part of it.
Yeah, if you're going to say the teleology of how we relate to one another socially and economically more specifically, I would say I think that's what it is, because he even if you extend this out to the rest of the animal kingdom, any animals that are social animals such as wolves, chimpanzees or whatever, all other social animals basically do this. They have the hunters, and then the hunters get the food, and then the hunters share with the other people. After the victorious one gets his first share, then he passes on. All these animals, even the fucking savage like African dogs do this, right?
Hyenas.
It's just like they rip the baby out of the fucking the pregnant antelope or whatever, and then they hold the neck while they're killing the mom, and it's brutal, but they still have this this relation. Then they share the food with everybody, so there's exchange of goods and services with each other. And so I do think when you're talking about like the teleological structure of the economical and social actions to one another, it seems accurate. I don't see why not to disagree with that. Right? And so then he goes back and says that then really what is the private social man then? If this is the good social man, what is the private social man? The private social man is basically the coercion and the exploitation of taking one's goods without offering anything in return. And so having this dichotomy, then you're able to see how he claims that the state is the latter. He says the state is the one who coerces, and exploits without offering anything of goods or services to the people, and simply takes what it is and then demands with a gun to pay taxes, right?
Yeah.
So it's like literally, it's like if you don't pay taxes, you're going to jail. They're not giving you anything; they're just saying that you must pay the taxes for this. Now, I think a leftist can argue that, well, what they're giving you is roads, or what they're giving you are like public schools, blah blah blah, like all these things, that they are actually giving you certain things. But I do think the enforcement of the power of prison and or death is compulsion. Like you can't say that that's an actual transaction that we're like, what if the parent doesn't send their kid to public school?
Yeah.
You're still paying the property taxes for the school that is in that area, right? And so there is no actual mutual exchange. It is a coercion of a certain entity that takes what it wants from you,
whether or not you receive anything in return.
Yeah. While most economical exchanges does not function that way. It's like you're getting a goods and services for your exchange. And so it seems like, once you start breaking that down to other argumentations, it's a pretty accurate one. So like I spell it out. He himself didn't do this, but I kind of went back to his previous arguments of showing how fallacious the other idea is, but using now his redefinition of it. So if coercion and exploitation is the means of the government, and the government incurred debt, therefore coercion and exploitation is the means for the debt. It's like, yeah, that would make sense, because then how do they pay the debt? They don't pay the debt by offering goods and services. They pay the debt by taxing people more, right? And then if you don't pay, then they put you in jail, or in some historical states they would kill you for treason or whatever. Yeah. And so, that actually follows. And then deductively, if you look at if you spell it out, it is a valid argument. And I think it's semantically true. It's like, that is the way the state functions. The state doesn't function by being a part of the market. The state functions as being apart from the market. You have the market, you have the people trading, and then you have the state who exists apart from it, and takes the money that it wants to take because you're functioning within the state. Yeah. And that's how they justify it. They're like, yeah, but we're letting you build a business here. Like in the Anchorage municipality sent me this thing, like I have to pay $500 in taxes. I'm like, what the fuck did you do, right? But their justification is, but we're letting you do it, right? So it's like, okay, so I guess now I owe you money. And do the same thing, you have an employee, they start taxing you on that. It's like, because we're letting you have an employee. It's like, fuck you, really. And so there is this. I think anybody that has to deal with the state in a business-wise can really look at this and be like, that's actually definitely the case. Oh, yeah. Is that we're not exchanging any goods and services. I'm exchanging it with my customers, I'm exchanging it with everybody else, and you're just wanting a chunk of the change because you didn't shoot me. Yeah. Really, that's what it is. It's okay. I should be thankful that you didn't imprison me and kill me for having this exchange with these people. And then I'm giving them the money so that they don't shoot me and they don't put me in prison. And so there is I think there is an accurate description here where the previous description I think led to fallacies. This description does not lead to any fallacies. You could do the same thing argument with Jews, right? Coercive exploitation is the means of the government. If the government killed the Jews, therefore killing the Jews was a coercive and exploitative act. It was like, it makes sense, right? Right. And then when you break it down syntactically, it's also valid. So it's not only since it's valid and true, it's a sound argument. Yeah. And being a sound argument, it's literally indisputable. It's like attempting to dispute that 2 + 2 = 4. It's like, no, this is just accurate. There is nothing that you could really dispute unless you can show some way that one of these premises are false, that it doesn't correlate with reality. And I think that's just
not possible.
It's not it's possible. Yeah, this is the way the state functions, and so the state functions in this way. And I think it's indisputable. So in his conclusion, and then I'll end my rant, and then I'll let you go to your questions. In conclusion, he says that finally that basically you have two powers always kind of in a struggle within any kind of society. You have the social power and the state power. So the social power, he says, is following the natural law, really, that there's a peaceful exchange of goods and services for other goods and services. And they have the state power that is the power of coercion and exploitation, that they're not actually offering anything to it, but they're just taking. So the peaceful exchange of goods and services produces things like computers, other technology and everything, and then the government takes it and they use it for their own means, which many times goes into war or more exploitative powers, right? To spy on people or whatever. And so here's where some of my criticisms are going to come into play, and here's where some of my I think interesting aspects of his text. So this is for me somewhat reminiscent of Augustine's City of God. So if anybody has ever read that,
can we cover that sometime?
Yeah, we cover.
Is it worth it?
Oh yeah,
it's huge.
Yeah, I know it is. Yeah.
I have a copy of it.
Yeah, that would have to be.
Did you
like,
read it in Latin or something?
Towards some of it, I did. Yeah.
we should conduct an episode in Latin. we should both learn Latin colloquially enough to do an episode.
And so in this, he also forms a dichotomy. He says the city of man, the city of God, and the city of man, interestingly enough, he says always pulls you away from being a fully realized man. So to be fully realized man, the city of man always pulls you away, or in some parts, the city of Caesar, or whatever it may be.
And tell me how he sets that dichotomy up.
How he sets that up?
Yeah,
so he says that is basically inevitable. Every state has a city of man because you're going to have some kind of ruling power. So within that ruling power is going to govern like your economical well-being. It's going to cover how you function, how you relate to another. It's even going to function whether you can practice, your religion. Is going to always be that. And so they're always over and against you fully realizing as a man. And then he calls the city of God, and the city of God is the one that actually allows you to be a fully realized man. And so there's always this tension in every civilization of the city of God and the city of man, that you have this social structure that wants not wants you, but that is there so that you become fully realized man. But you always have the state, you always have the city of man that pulls you away from that, And I found it interesting that some of his this writing kind of made me a little reminiscent. There's obvious differences, right? There's in Augustine's writing, he's talking about the telos of man in general. The teleology of man is to be fully realized, oriented towards God and whatever. And so that's an obvious difference. But if I would put into terms, it seems like Murray is looking only at the city of man.
On a first name basis.
Yeah.
Rothbard.
Rothbard, yes. that he's only looking at the city of man and looking at that dichotomy in the city of man. Yeah. Which I would say is a pretty good one. So I actually agree with his social dichotomy of the social and the state power. But the part that I disagree is in his definition of what the social power is. He says the social power is the peaceful, and this is the part that I think is absurd, is the peaceful transaction of goods and services for others' goods and services. And that's just, it's not the case, right? To say that the social powers do not exploit people, to say the social powers is not coercion, is kind of silly. So
this is actually my issue with, and this is kind of the first time I'm having to like flesh it out verbally. With anarchism generally, is that it assumes that if you eradicate the state, man can find I don't mean state in the same way, but a state in which they can operate, in which all men voluntarily cooperate together to bring about the fruition of man on earth. And it's utopian. It's a utopian ideology. And you can tell it does kind of, I haven't read anything else by him. We should cover it eventually.
We could.
We have years of this. We're never quitting. So
we
have a long time to do this, but there's a certain kind of, whether or not it's, there's a naivety to it. Whether or not it's willful ignorance regarding the nature of man socially, or whether it's just ignorant. That like you can I don't know how you can have as many people on the planet as we do, and just eradicate all states, and then everyone on Earth just
Yes.
Which they probably wouldn't say. Mm-hmm. They probably wouldn't say.
I know.
I think that there just needs to be an admitting of the fact that they would just prefer the chaos of no state over the chaos of having states.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's a position you can defend, but like just saying that like everything would be, you can have 500,000 people.
Yeah.
Living within the framework of a state. Mm-hmm. I don't think you can say that life would be markedly better without one. I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the first part of it is obviously it's the first and second parts are kind of counter arguments of each other, or that's actually he starts the book with disproving an argument.
Yes,
and then he starts with his own argument.
Yes,
which I think is actually proper.
It is, yeah.
But then he almost did he really offer much example? Which he was tasteful in his amount with our criticism of like sexual personae and Madness and Civilization were that it was just there were way too many examples of nothing.
Because that's all it was.
But this, he'd make a point. He would use one example and then go on to make another point.
Which is the proper way.
It's very tasteful.
Yeah,
but,
it's the proper way.
That's why this is 62 pages.
Yes, yeah.
And the audiobook for Sexual Persona is 35 hours.
Yes, yeah.
Of
nothing.
But it just really seemed to me to be most effectively understood as a critique of modern liberal democracies more than states as like per se.
Yeah.
Most of his the way that he described the United States like Supreme Court as just a what's the word? Like functionally just legitimizing the other branches of of the government, like how Supreme Court justices are nominated by the executive and approved by the legislative branch of the American government. And how on earth can you assume that a branch of government nominated by the other two is supposed to be neutral in its assessment of the other ones? That's a very like very sound criticism and observation. Like how he said, divine rule was then turned into divine approval, because if a king in a monarchy is supposed to abide by by divine law, which I don't think is well defined I generally don't think it is.
Yeah.
What's there to keep the king from just saying everything he does is divinely inspired? Which is a correct. I mean, he understands human nature in his criticism.
Yeah.
But really, most of his examples are like his New Deal example is fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think one thing that I would say, just in terms of his example, since he wants to make a more sweeping claim, he probably would have been better off with using an example of like older times,
or one
like
from now and one from then.
Yeah,
that's what I mean.
That's what I'm going to say. Like,
he just uses American examples.
Yes, so he could have used Holy Roman Empire example, and then use an American example, or then a British one,
Greek one, or a Roman one.
And I think I agree. Criticism-wise, I would have been more fleshed out.
Because it really, to me, serves as a criticism of the American system, which is why I think you and I would like it so much, is because it is like a condemnation of the American system.
But I think his actual argument
is not just applied to the American system.
I think his examples
I think that by nature of the fact that he only provided American examples, it kind of narrows the scope of his argument a bit.
Yeah.
In its application.
Yes, I agree with you. Yeah.
And because I think his critique of the American system is like everything we've ever said about it. Like it's like
right. Yes. Yeah. Which is it's an accurate one.
It's fantastic, especially when he says 100 years. He's talking about he's constantly referencing the end of the Civil War to now.
Yes,
is essentially or the War of Northern Aggression or whatever.
Yeah.
But, I'm trying to think if I have anything else to say before I move on to the questions or anything, because I think you summed up
one end.
To this. Yeah.
And so like the my other end note was that is that even if you're not going to go through the utopian route, because in the
Yeah.
text he doesn't go to the utopian route, but we know like other theorists.
I
that
can
do,
imagine
right?
that I would read what he
Yes,
says if
yeah.
he's the one of the founding fathers of like American
Right, yeah.
anarcho-capitalism. I can probably assume
Right.
where he would go with it.
But even if he didn't go that route, I think that he doesn't teleologically understand the nature of the market. And this is where it is.
Okay.
So
That's
so
interesting.
he says that the market is the exchange of goods and services for other goods and services. That is not the function of the market. The function of the market is to profit.
Yeah.
And anybody that owns a business knows this.
Yeah.
It isn't that, me owning this business doesn't mean that the function of this business is to get other people's goods and services. The function of this business is to make more money.
Yeah.
Is simply for profit. And so it is always profit driven. And so since
Any
yes.
social service it offers is secondary.
it is exactly. And
Not to say that a business can't positively affect the community
Yes.
or whatever.
But if you go to most businesses and you were to say you will not make any money doing this, most of them will shut down, 100%.
Or not even
if
enough
not all.
money. You won't
Yes.
make enough money.
You won't make enough money, right? Yeah.
Not even just no money.
Yes.
You won't make enough money doing
Because
this to justify it.
it isn't for the exchange of goods and services. It is for profit. And so because it is for profit, that is the goal of it. Anybody that owns a business knows your goal
And
is
how do you
profit.
make money?
So how do you make
the
money?
exchange of goods and services.
Yes, yes. And so this is where I think he fails in his description. He has a really, really good description of the state. He has a very shitty one for the social power that he describes.
Yeah.
So he describes the social power as just being this like friendly, we make things and we want to share it
And
with
that's
each
the
other.
utopian part.
And that's the utopian part. It's
Yes,
like, no, that's not accurate. I think what we have is a profit. I mean, any market is profit driven. And so with profit driven, there is no reason to believe that the social power is not also coercive and exploitative.
So it's really interesting. So this is one of the founding fathers of American libertarianism. Another would be Ayn Rand, which I think I really think you and I should cover the virtue of selfishness.
Okay, yeah.
Because there's arguments made.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
ridiculous. But it's
yeah.
I think eventually to cover that. But she, I think, recognized that it's not evil to want to profit off of your trade of goods and services.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
So I
That is
think
the goal
she
of
took
it.
the opposite. That selfishness itself is a virtue.
I know. Right. Yeah,
So
yeah.
we should cover that. Might be an
Yeah.
interesting
Yeah, it would.
thing to cover. But
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
think that's actually a good point to kind of to go into what I'm saying, because what I'm saying is that since he's only looking at the dichotomy within the city of man, both powers, both social power and state power, is coercive and exploitative, where selfishness is its function, because its power is really to remove you from being human.
Okay.
That is what it is. It is therefore licentious behavior, and licentious behavior removes one from being a fully realized person.
licentious behavior partakes of the city of man.
Yes. Oh, both.
Yeah.
They both do.
Yeah.
Both the
Yeah.
social and the state.
Yeah.
And so, and this is why I think it would be a much better conclusion to state that no, they're both shit.
Yeah.
You have the social powers that exploits people, and does whatever, and you have the state
So
power.
here,
that
I
exploits
actually
people.
have a myriad of questions that follow
Okay,
from
yeah,
this.
yeah.
So first, can we, his use of the words coercion, exploitation,
Yeah.
etc. Would you say, so is it wrong to exploit per se? What does it mean to exploit? Like what?
Yeah, I guess to utilize somebody for your own personal gain.
But when you say you're exploiting someone, does that imply harm on their end? Harm to the other?
No, I think it just means that you're using them. It's utility,
Which is business.
which is business. Yeah.
Yeah. Ideally not to their detriment. You can
Ideally,
exploit
yes,
someone
exactly.
not to their detriment.
Exactly. Yeah. But you're still.
You can actually
using them.
exploit someone to their benefit. If you
can.
pay them really
Yeah,
well
yeah.
for whatever,
Yeah.
whatever, like they can come out on the other end of being exploited better than they were off.
Yeah.
I sense that to him, there is and I don't know if he said anything specific to define this thought clearly.
Yeah.
But to me, it seems like he thinks that the exploitation of others is per se wrong, and that only the state does that.
Yes.
Ideally, that
I
man
agree.
does not naturally exploit one another
I agree with the first part. I disagree with the second. I do think it is wrong.
to exploit.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it is wrong.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to Augustine. I was like, yeah, but that is the function that we're living in. Like
Yes.
we can't escape
But he's saying that. So near the end of it, when he at the end talks about, because even in his conclusion, he talks about how, or here, there's a couple things. So he talks about, he actually praises prior generations, eras in time when, for example, during wartime, you could travel freely between countries because you exist. The state had no reason to be curtailing your communication with one another because it didn't involve, you were just a person, you're not the state. So I don't think that I think he likes certain states more than others. I don't think that he's just condemning states at all.
Yeah.
But when he, in his conclusion, he literally says that the degeneration of, or that what the 17th, 18th, and 19th century were periods of expanding social power, and that the 20th century was the state power catching up. So he's really operating within the modern period. He's not.
Of course he
yes,
is.
yes,
Right,
which is to be expected.
Of
Anyone writing the 20th century, whatever.
Yeah.
But I sense a weird parallel with like Marx's work in his critique of like the Industrial Revolution.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I agree that the populace is not the state per se, because if they weren't, you wouldn't call them the state, because you're literally differentiating between the two.
Yes, yeah.
But I don't think that you can actually say that the state is comprised of exploiters and the populace is comprised of good people.
Exactly,
he literally
yes.
references the populace as good people.
Yes, yeah.
And I'm like, you can't do that.
I think they're both shit.
But I think that there's like an echoing of kind of like a Marxist kind of thought.
Yeah,
because he is an economist of the 20th century.
Yes,
so like there is a kind of a
I do think that there's Marxist flavor, but he's placing it differently. And so
I agree.
Like Marx
This is almost like Marx but smarter.
Yes.
Is kind of what I was thinking earlier today.
Yeah, because Marx puts most of the blame on business owners. You know, he puts most of the blame on the producers of wealth, while he's putting the blame on the state.
But it's a very classist argument.
It is, yes.
Because he
it's almost like
there's a little
anti-Marx
screed
in
against
that way.
like the intellectual class
Exactly,
also.
yeah,
And it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
okay, what's there's a palpable like post-communist flavor to it.
Yeah.
Which again is very 20th century. He's part of the Austrian school. So it's like, you can't really separate the lineage of the two.
Yes. Yeah.
I was just curious if you kind of sensed the same thing.
I definitely did. Yeah.
Parallel.
Yeah. It's almost
at least in method of categorization, not necessarily the categories that were.
And in reality, like I view him as, how can you put it? Like, you know, there is the Marxist theory that blames the business owner, and then there's his theory that blames the state, and they're almost like the opposite of the same coin. Yeah, it's like they're functioning.
I like this better because I think it actually reflects reality.
I do
more.
Me too. Yes,
but I still think it's incomplete.
Yeah, I think it's incomplete because the other half, he doesn't reflect reality at all. Like to me, it's abundantly clear that he has never owned a business. If he truly thinks,
well, he's an academic.
Yes. Yeah. If he truly thinks that business is like the polite, good mutual exchange of goods and services, like then you have never ran a business.
It's a Raggedy Ann doll, like washing clothes.
Business,
like the Raggedy Andy is like making shoes.
Right.
And they're like smiling.
I mean, business is brutal. But business is pretty much like a mini war.
But it's like it's actually a social contract.
It is. It's an
when
actual.
You engage in it. You are choosing to engage.
And
in it. You don't have
part.
to.
Yes, but yes, and I agree with that.
Yeah.
But I do. I kind of end with saying that even though I agree with his dichotomy, I don't agree with his explanation of the social of the social power. And I think he doesn't realize how dangerous. Like the real danger is not so much that the state gains power. The real danger is when both the social power and the state power align themselves. And I think that's what we're experiencing now, is when you have people like Facebook, Twitter, Google.
This is a really
aligning with the government, with the
Okay.
state power. That
So
is when
this is-
that's when the tyranny exists. Like, it is good to have this fight between the social power and the state power. It's good that we have these two dipshit powers trying to exploit people for personal gain. That is a good thing. But when they align with each other, that's when you have tyranny, because you no longer have the battle. You no longer have Facebook attacking the government. Now you have the government and Facebook being
figured
the
out a
same.
way to
Yeah,
to
CNN
exploit
and
each
them.
other.
To exploit each
They're
other.
not
right?
friends.
Right, yes,
Yeah.
but they are exploiting each other, and so so now we're
symbiotic,
living
yeah.
in tyranny. And
So technology question. This is an
Yeah.
interesting. This is. So we kind of answered a couple of mine, but I have little specific thoughts that I
Yeah.
thought might be interesting to discuss. So in chapter 6, I don't remember what the title of that one is. It's the one where he talks about war and stuff. And
I think how states relate to each other, something like that.
yes, so 5 is how the state sustains itself,
Yeah.
or sustains itself, and then
think
6 is like the way the states relate or something.
Yeah.
So in 6, he's talking about how during wartime, it was of little interest to the state, or the state really didn't even have any control of you, like corresponding in letters with people, quote unquote, from the enemy state. Your friendship with people was it kind of trumped your state affiliation or whatever. And it seems to me he makes the argument that was due to a different moral framework or like a different understanding of the person's relationship to the state.
Right, yeah.
But I would argue a bit that it's due, like, technologically. The state did not have the ability to censor a courier running across the line
Right,
with a
yeah,
letter in his bag
besides
and then
shooting
handing
him,
it to
I
somebody.
guess.
But
Yep.
now, increasingly over the past, especially 50 years or more, it's easier and easier and easier to keep people from talking to each other.
Yeah.
Because we're communicating with people, both in more technologically advanced ways and over longer distances.
Yeah.
The state can now just do that.
Yes.
They can just keep us from talking. That's not, I'm not saying they do often to people. Maybe they do, but like it doesn't, I don't think that you can attribute the fact that people from Germany and France, if they were at war, could like talk to each other to just a different understanding of the way that the individual relates to the state. I don't think, because if you were doing that over Twitter, over an ocean, it's much easier for the state to intervene.
Yes, yeah.
Or the threat of intervention is much greater. So
Yeah.
you're less likely to do, because I wouldn't say, like, espionage is such a 20th century thing. I mean, it's
Right, yeah.
obviously it occurred for all of
I
human
know,
history,
I know,
but
yeah.
like espionage used to be a guy in sandals running across the desert.
Yeah.
Like you can't
Yeah.
do that. But now that you have typewriters and ships and increasingly airplanes and now the internet, the
Yes.
threat of intervention is much greater.
Yeah.
So I think that point wasn't necessary. And I obviously he's right. This was written in 1974.
Yeah, yeah.
So he doesn't have the internet really.
He doesn't, right, yeah.
There is no internet yet. So I don't know if that point is as stark as it is now, but I think I think that description, or that the argument that implies
Yes.
falls quite flat.
Yeah, and
Because
also
he does say that like states used to not be able to interfere. I understand that, but he really does imply that it's because of the understanding of the individual that the state was different. And I don't think it was. I don't think that's the reason that was able to. It just is like you can't tell a guy's running through the woods across a border as well as you can now.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because of the way we give information, it's just gonna be,
the nature of the
way
transfer
different.
of information is different.
Yeah.
It's much more
I
complex
think that's a
now,
fair
and
point.
it's
That's
much more
That's not
vulnerable.
something that I caught, but yeah, I think that's a fair
Because
point.
that was one of the things that really stood out to me.
Yeah.
In the way that this was misunderstanding of the way that, or the reason. I mean, I think that I don't know in the 70s what They have telephones,
radios,
phones, typewriters, airplanes. They have.
Yeah.
I mean, it's wildly more advanced than
right? Yes,
14th century Central Europe or something. You know, like late Roman Empire. Like their ability to constrict the flow of information is much greater and increasingly so.
Yeah.
So I really think it's naive to attribute that to an understanding of the nature of state and man or what. Like, I thought that was a little dumb. I think it was a little poetic, a little too.
Yeah. I think part of my notes, I wrote that it's silly. Yeah. I really do think like his description of the social power is just silly. I don't know what world he lives in that if he truly thinks that, like private entities that produce goods and services are just there too. I mean, it seems so stupid.
Like it just literally seems like kind of fairy tale.
Yeah, it's like it's not the case.
Like you're writing a children's book a little bit.
It's for the culmination of profit.
Well, it's very Rousseauian. It's very Rousseauian in a way that like
because profit gives power, and so any means in which these companies could get power, they're going to take it. The reason why Facebook aligns himself with his government is because it could get more power. The reason why Twitter and all of them is it could get more power, and then they use each other for that. And so you're always going to have this interplay between the state and the market or the social power, as he calls it. But to claim that the social powers or the market is just...
in what way is the state not a social power? Is my question.
Because
it's a manifestation of human nature.
It's because
he would say it's not.
Yes, he would say that is actually going against the
natural state of man.
And I don't disagree with that, but I also do think that the market is as well. That's the thing. I think the social power is also going against the state of the natural state of man. Is that if you think the teleology of man is, to be a Christ-like figure, is for the sacrifice of oneself, is for the good of the other, is for all these things.
If everyone was doing that, there'd be no free market.
There'll be no free market, right?
There'd be no state.
There will be no, And so I honestly think that Augustine's view of it is just much more accurate. Is that you have this state of man that is supposed to be fulfilling of what it means to be human, is to be loving, is to be sacrificial, is to give the good for the other. And then you have the city of man, which you just don't have that. You're just going to have this infighting. You're going to have this, the government versus the free market. You're going to have the state versus the social. But they're both out for the same thing. They're both out for profit. They're both out for gaining more and more for themselves.
They have an audiobook of City of God.
Do they? Nice.
It's 46 hours.
Yes.
Okay, that would take me weeks.
Yeah, I know. Me too. Yeah.
But still,
there's too much to dissect. I mean, his work is very dense.
We could do a series.
Yeah.
That would be really fun to do a series on the City of God. It'd be nice to break it down too.
It would. Yeah. Because it's just like when you look at this, it's again, to me, it's just silly. It's like, fine, you can't say that the wealth producers, the ones who produce wealth, because you hear this argument from many libertarians who are like, now everybody's better off than anybody was 500 years ago, 600 years ago.
It's like materially, sure.
Yeah, materially better off, I guess, but the disparity still exists. For anybody to say that the disparity does not exist is being deliberately stupid. It's like the wealth producers live so much better than you.
I know.
They live so much better than me. They live so much better than any of our listeners. And for them to think that there is no disparity.
Mark Zuckerberg is actually a listener.
Yes. You have fucking like Jeff Bezos and that South African
Bezos is
dude
wasting money launching himself
going to
into
space. Yes,
he can.
Yes. And so, because the market is out for profit, the disparity simply increases. It is true that everybody gets raised up with the trade of goods and services.
Yeah.
But the disparity also begins to increase. Then you not only have somebody that can, fly into space. You have somebody with enough money to say, I'm just going to buy the moon, right? Because the disparity gets more and more within the free market. So an unchecked free market is just as tyrannical as an unchecked state.
Yeah.
And for him to think that that is not the case is not comprehending human nature at all.
Yeah.
Is not comprehending what the market actually is.
Does it miscomprehend human nature to the degree that Marx did, but the opposite direction?
Yes, 100%.
To the same degree.
Yeah,
okay.
to the same degree, but
Okay.
is the opposite. And it's to misunderstand what the trades of goods and services actually is. It is not there to give you a good and service. It is there to make money. And if they can monopolize and coerce you to buy their product, every business would. Every business, I don't care who it is, every business, if they can coerce everybody to say you're demanded to buy my product, they're going to be like, sure. Every insurance company, once the auto insurance says that the government says you have to buy auto insurance, that any of them struggle. Like, no, that's coercion, man. I don't want them to buy. The Geico could be like, we're going to protest this. You don't have to buy our insurance. No, Geico was like, fuck yeah. Yes, take it. You have to. It's the law.
They'll unzip their pants.
Yes. Because the function of business, the function of goods and services is for profit.
That was
isn't
one of
to
the
give you
first
something.
rational arguments I ever heard you made was how insurance is evil because it's the sale of the potentiality of a service and not a service itself.
Yes, yeah.
I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I think that was the one. It is nothing
Yes.
exists. And then you were really mad about car insurance years ago.
Yes, insurance in general. I refuse. It's like, I'm not going to pay into a potential.
Yeah.
It's stupid.
Like insurance companies destroyed the healthcare system.
They did, yes.
Yeah.
It isn't that, like if you just left it up for the doctors, they're going to lower their price. But if you tell them no, but now we're going to demand them for, or that you have this opportunity to make $80,000 because you did anesthetics, and which, like when my dad got it, that's how much it cost for a fucking day of anesthesia, $80,000. Why did it cost that much?
Because insurance pays for it.
Because insurance, yes. And I didn't have insurance. And you know how much he took from me? $1,500. Because he was like, I said, I don't have insurance. He was like,
Was it at
what do you have?
Providence?
Yeah.
I love Providence.
Yeah. And so they said,
So
what
the reason that Providence is a great hospital
Yeah.
is they will provide you service and you go, I literally don't have that. They're like, fuck it. We have
Yeah.
enough money.
They always ask you.
Regional's bad.
Yeah, they are.
But
Yeah, but they ask you like, how much do you have? It's like, I got $1,500. It's like, okay. And that's it.
like when my father was you do you know the Horizon House?
Which one?
Horizon House.
No, I don't know.
It's not necessarily hospice. They offer hospice.
Okay.
But it's like it's right. So if here's Providence,
Yeah.
and then here's the library at UAA, and here's like the science buildings
Yeah.
and the engineering. It's like on the other side of Providence from.
Yes.
But it's
yeah.
this like really nice apartment building kind of thing. It's
Yeah.
like a mix between an apartment building and a senior home where they either do transitional care or hospice care.
Yeah, yeah.
And they wanted to put but we didn't, like my dad couldn't go home because there's stairs and his hips are broken. Like he literally just can't
Yeah.
function in the house.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's dying. And the director of the Horizon House was on the phone with my mom, and it's like $6,000 a month to stay in this place.
Yeah.
And he was like, don't worry about it. They're like, what? And she's just don't worry about it. He doesn't
awesome.
have. He doesn't have that long.
Yes. Yeah.
Just stay. Whatever. So it was for free. They just
Yes.
gifted us a $6,000
because
they have so much money.
Yes, that's why.
They don't care if
Yeah,
you
they
pay
don't
them.
care. Because even if they just have one, like Providence, if they just had like one dumbass that has insurance, right?
Yeah.
And that actually gave them $80,000, the insurance company gives, it's like, we're good. I could literally do anesthesia for the rest of the year and it has been paid for. And so, it's my gripe against insurance companies. It's stupid.
That's my first. So
Yes,
car
yeah.
insurance is stupid.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Insurance in general.
I've never been in a car accident in my
Exactly.
car, ever.
Yes. Yeah.
You haven't?
No. Yeah.
Why am I paying insurance?
Yes. Well, it's throwing money. That's what it is. So yeah, but we could give you something.
It's what is it? It's $100.
Well, someone,
I only pay like $70 a month.
yeah.
For insurance.
So I've never been in an accident that was my fault.
that you would have had to pay for.
Yes, somebody did hit me before, but that was them.
And then the fact that your payments go up because someone else hit you is ridiculous.
Yes. Yeah.
I've never been in an accident before.
Yeah.
I pay my insurance is really low because I drive shitty cars. You do too. So your insurance is low too.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I just would love to calculate how much money I've put into that and will never need.
I know.
I've never been in a car accident.
Yes.
I've never been close to a car accident.
Yeah.
Because I drive well.
My entire, I think my first time I got car insurance was, I think I was 30.
You just drove car without car insurance? And you just never had a reason to be pulled over or anything?
Because I never got into accidents. I never got anything. So I was like 30 years old. I was like,
Cops pull me over constantly.
Do they? Yeah.
Did I tell you the story when January 2020, I was driving and Alec wanted ice cream. So I went to Cars in Eagle River and I bought ice cream back when they were open 24 hours. Mm-hmm. Have I told you with the hours that Taco Bell operates in Eagle River?
No, what is it now?
Amanda, listen to this. Sunday through Saturday, the Taco Bell in Eagle River operates between 5 and 10 p.m.
What? In Eagle River?
5 hours. It's open 35 hours a week. It's open long enough for like one guy to get 35 hours a week. Anyway, it's amazing. Eagle River is dead. The McDonald's closes at 10 p.m.
Because of COVID?
Yes. Well, they just can't get anybody to work.
Oh, wow.
It's really, really bad.
Yeah.
Eagle River is a shithole.
Yeah.
Like tumbleweeds roll. It's horrible.
Yeah.
Taco Bell closes at 10 p.m. It doesn't open till 5 p.m.
How about McDonald's?
They do dinner. Closes at 10 p.m. Wow. Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Like shocking. Like there's nowhere to eat in Eagle River after like 9 or 10 p.m.
Is Anchorage the same way?
Yeah, a lot of it. Most of it.
Wow.
Yeah. This one here closes at 10 p.m. now too.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my irritation. What was I saying? Oh, so I go to get ice cream, and I buy a thing of Ben & Jerry's, like chocolate chip cookie dough. So imagine I get in my car and move that mass to Cars for this much ice cream, and then I leave. Yeah. And then I'm like, oh, I don't have my lights on, and then I flick my lights on as I'm on the street. And a cop's way too close by me. I'm like, fuck, what do you want?
Yeah.
Like, what do you, like, why are you doing this to me? And so he throws his lights on, and then I pull into a parking lot into Walgreens in the Eagle River, like right there. And he's like, all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, my insurance card literally expired like 3 days previous. And I give it to him. I'm like, hey, I have insurance. This card just expired. I haven't gotten the new one in the mail. And he does everything. And he doesn't give me a ticket, but he's like, I can't let you drive home because you don't have insurance.
Yeah.
So he gets me in the back of his cop car to Eagle River, or not to my house from Walgreens, which is a 20-minute walk. Yeah. And it's -5 degrees outside. So I have to go from my house back to my car to drive it home because he wouldn't let me drive home. Wow. So I shouldn't have to have insurance for this.
I know, this is stupid.
The only thing that insurance has ever done for me is screw me over because I don't have the stupid card that State Farm hasn't sent me in the mail yet. That's all insurance does for me.
No, but I think it was around probably 2007 or 2008 when they started to have much better technology with the cops. But before that, Photoshop was just a gift. And so, when I bought a car, they demanded that I have to get insurance, and so like I'll pay for that month, and then they'll give me like the card and everything, and then after that I just I kept reproducing it in Photoshop.
And so just scan it and print a new one.
Kind of, but I would recreate it, and so when you recreate it, then you can like print it out high quality.
Of course, this is not something you can do now because
now
have like stuff in it.
Yeah, so now they could actually look up the number and all this stuff. But back then, if you just show them, like if I got pulled over, I show them the card, they'll look at it like, okay, and they'll just hand me
It's a beautiful time.
Yeah, I know. We don't have that anymore.
Everything sucks now. That's why everyone's anarchists. That's why everyone's reading this shit.
Like my parents told me how easy it was to get a Social Security number. So if listeners don't know, my parents came from Peru illegally. Yeah. And so and
then your mom was deported and then came back.
Yeah. So back then
she just flew back.
Like you would literally just go to the Social Security office, and then they wouldn't ask for a birth certificate or anything. They'd be like, I need a Social Security number. So you didn't get one yet? It's like, we didn't get one. So it's back in the 70s. I think Social Security started in the 60s or 70s, right? I can't remember. Yeah, and so
Did it really?
Yeah, it wasn't that long. Well, maybe it started with a New Deal, maybe 40s, 50s.
Well, I wonder they started giving it to people when they were born much later.
Yeah. And so, my parents, I think my parents came in the 60s, and so they would just go in there and they would just ask for one. They wouldn't like ask for a birth certificate. They wouldn't ask for anything. And so then they would just give them a Social Security number. And so there was this, one point that my
1972.
1972.
Anyway.
Yeah, that my dad.
I'm so jealous you get to sneeze. You don't like sneezing as much as I do. I sneezed 4 times in a row today, and I met God, Amanda. He's a guy. We were wrong. Hey, God. We had a conversation, and I was like zipped back into my body.
Yeah, he's ripped.
It's the hottest big guy I ever
It's
saw.
like the Korean Jesus. Did you ever see him?
Yes. It's like poof, 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 into the wormhole, and I meet God.
Yes.
I'm like,
No,
I have to hit the gym now.
But he kept like all his old Social Security cards and everything. Yeah. I think he had like 4 different numbers. Because they would just give it to you. It's like you go there, be like, yeah, I need a Social Security number. They're like, okay, what's your name? And they just like type it up, and they would like print on one of those dot matrix printer, like it's like print out your Social Security number. Yeah. Yeah, and so technology's kind of fucking all that up. And like my first license was just laminate.
My dad had all of his old licenses.
Did he?
Yeah. It was just a piece of paper laminated.
Yeah, it was just a piece of paper laminated. There was no hologram. There was no scanner. Now they're like.
What is your ID? Don't show your ID to the camera.
Oh yeah.
My ID. 1 second. I want to see if you have the same one.
Yeah, probably.
Let me find it. No, I got the one from the Sweet Spot.
Oh really?
Remember there was a redesigned Sweet Spot where they did the
Oh, that one, yeah.
Yes.
I don't have that one anymore. That's
you have the stupid new one.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Okay. It was like they only did that for like a year or 2.
Did they? Yeah.
Yeah, and it has the fancy little
I moved around too much, so I always had to come back and get a new license.
Yeah, I'm showing you, but there's a little Alaska here on the card.
Yes.
I'm blocking everything with my hand so no one can see my ID information. But it's the little like see-through Alaska and everything, and like the snowflake holograms. And stuff. It was like a very I bet they just didn't have money to produce it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Because there's the old one, which was for
there was a long
15
time,
years or whatever.
And then there's one before that I got.
Yes.
Back in the 90s.
It's the laminate one with like the like Courier New font, like the typewriter font.
It was so bad.
My mom should still have it. She has his ID from like 1981 or something. It's an interesting thing to look at.
They would literally just make your ID there. So they would take your photo and they would just
It's like when did banks stop printing your debit cards at the location?
Oh,
they used to do
Alaska,
that.
USA's now doing that again. Yeah, I got my new one.
Credit card got blocked because of fraud, and I still haven't been able to. I have to go in there before 6 p.m., which between Monday and Friday, which is when the card service is closed, but I can't get there till 6.
Yeah.
So I haven't been able to use my credit card for 2 months.
Oh, damn.
I'm still paying it off. My credit score is really good now.
Yeah. My bank card just started breaking on a wallet. Yeah. So I went in there, and now they have those new cards that have they look different now, the Las Gusa cards. So.
Do they have? They're just printed now. They don't have the raised bumps. They have the raised bumps.
Oh, I don't have it with me, but yeah, they're just white. They look different.
It's really boring.
Yes, yeah. When I went to Pennsylvania for college, over there they already started making like actual IDs that we have now, but Alaska is really far behind the times.
So they were like, "Is this fake?"
Yeah, they were like it was literally like the picture exacto knifed out, and then like put it up. With their thing, they just run it through a laminate machine, and they'll give you like your license. There was like no barcode.
Such a shitty place.
It was Alaska, and
so there was no barcode or anything.
No, there was nothing. it was like something that I could make in my studio. And it was just funny because they literally use an X-Acto knife. And so like you could see them doing it. The thing is they would like cut it out really quick and then they'll put it on there, make sure it's good. And they'll run through a laminate machine and then they'll give you ideas. Here's your driver's license.
You could have just made one.
Yes.
It's so stupid. What a stupid place. That's the Alaska that people idealize.
It is. Yeah.
Because this used to be a great place to be, but it's, now that we've caught up enough, it's just as bad as everywhere else.
I know. So then going to college in the East Coast in 2001, it was like nobody believed it was real. They wouldn't take it. Like this is. There's no way this is real. You guys.
Like I'm from Alaska. This is what they give me.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it was bad. I wish I still had it, but the cop that arrested me, like,
wait, you've been
stole
arrested?
it. Yeah.
For what?
We were just at a college party. It was a house party.
Oh,
they were too loud, and then there was underage drinkers. But
you didn't run fast enough.
Yeah. Nobody did. I was just being a spick.
Did you run?
No, I just went out there because I was of age, so I was already 21 at that point. So I'm not breaking the law. Yeah. You know, and so I just like was going to leave, and then he was like, the cop was just unreasonable. Like I got off on all the charges. Like there was nothing. He put me like
how long were you in
obstructing
jail?
Highway, just for the night.
Oh.
Yeah. It was like obstructing the highway, whatever. But like even my breathalyzer wasn't past 0.8. Like I wasn't even drunk. I think I had like one beer.
Yeah.
But the cop was just pissed because I wouldn't listen to him. And I probably should have listened to him. So I walked out and said, I'm just going to leave. He was like, what? So I just gave him my ID. I was like, I'm already 21. It doesn't matter. And he wouldn't believe the ID was real.
Oh, my God.
Yes.
But then once you were in jail.
Yeah, I think so. But he never gave me my ID back. And so then he told me to sit down. I was like, I'm not going to sit in the snow. He was like, sit down. I was like, no. And then he grabbed me and started beating me.
He just beat you up.
Yeah. Yeah, I was pretty pissed. And so when I was in a car,
because you're brown.
Yes. So I was in a car. I was like able to move my hands because I was cuffed, and then like I unzipped and I pissed all over his car.
What's wrong with you?
And so then I put it back, and so I was just like there. I was like, he was like, smell. And I was like, I don't know.
It's horrible.
That was great. But yeah. But he lost my ID, and I'm so pissed at that because it's like I would have kept that one. It was like my one, just
weird relic.
Yeah, it was my first
of an earlier time.
Yes, of the good days where you could just make your own IDs.
So let me have a couple more things that I think are interesting.
Yeah. We really went off on a tangent.
No, we need to every time. We need to personify. We need to people to remember who we are.
Yeah.
Pissing in cop cars and stuff. So to invert the argument.
Yeah.
Or I think that inverting the argument of we are the government and how when you. So when he says that we are he says when you take the argument that the government is comprised of the people, therefore we are the government.
Yeah.
You can second apply that to the celebrity class because those are we are them. Then, if it's this kind of the same thing that intellectual / celebrity class of the government. That's why people identify with celebrities to the degree that do now, especially.
Right. Yes.
Because we now, technologically speaking, have such intimate knowledge of their personal lives that they're essentially just an extension of our family.
Yes.
But I think if you invert that, so what do we do with people who are us? Is we hold them to moral standards.
Yeah.
So to invert I guess that argument of we are the government explains why people tend to hold the celebrities and politicians they like to such strong moral standards now.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Because the people spend a lot of time doing that I don't necessarily think that the populace didn't know tons about the personal life of like Julius Caesar.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
He was just like a god emperor.
Yeah.
He's not.
Yeah. I think that has a huge part to play with it. I also do think it's just a lack of of God and society in general. So they have to make gods of their idols.
Yeah.
And so
government has become the new religion. Which
it
I
does.
think I'm glad that that's a really lukewarm opinion now. Like that's just everybody just knows that now.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And that's true for both the left and the right. I think the right tend to try to hold the politicians to some kind of moral standards as if they're like, no,
they're people.
Yeah, they're people.
Yeah,
and they're people with power and money.
Yeah,
and they probably have their twink, their gay lover in the apartment somewhere else out there.
I mean, ideal, but
yes, yeah. It's like it's whatever. I mean, to think that they are any better than that, I think is stupid. It's like, no, this is the way that they exist, and so. But yeah, I
just think that explains it a bit.
I think it provides only a bit, but I think explains a lot of it. I think you're right. I think
that the government, we are the government. So
yes.
it's like if the government is of us, then we need to hold them to the same moral standard that we would hold anybody else of us.
Yes, yeah.
So scandal is much
more important with the celebrities and the politicians and everything.
Yeah. Than it was historically.
Yeah. Because
obviously, by a lot, which I think is both explained by our relationship to the state now in the modern world, in the Lockean, Hobbesian kind of framework, and just technologically it's easier to take pictures of celebrities doing things, or like politicians doing things they shouldn't be. There's just more to document.
Yes.
There's more ability to document. So I think it's a combination of the two, but I think you can explain that, because I don't know classically, like in the classical world, like in the medieval world, if people considered themselves the government the same way we do now.
No, not at all. Yeah.
Because when he says that criticism of like we are the government, it's like very modern. It has nothing to do with.
Yes, yeah. And I think he makes that clear in the beginning. He says this is the way we think of it now, which is fine. But I do,
because I don't think he would have nearly as much opposition to like a medieval, like a feudalist kind
right
of,
yes, he probably would in terms of some of its more exploitative powers that it has, but I think it was just open, and that's the thing. It was like people just understood it as that. I think what happened after the Age of Enlightenment is that we deceived ourselves. We thought we moved past that. We made a government it was like, no, you didn't. You just changed the names and you changed the process, right?
There was a little tiny bit of period of time where it maybe looked hopeful.
Maybe, yes. But no, in actuality, it's like fine. It's no longer like a blood lineage, but it's still a lineage of some sort.
Personality lineage,
whatever it is. That most of them have been connected in very obscure ways when you just kind of look at it, which starts like makes conspiracy theorists go crazy, because then they're just like, oh my gosh, look how connected they are. But even if you just look at the connection. Without the conspiratorial aspects, like but there's still a lineage. It's
a familiar lineage.
It is, yes, yeah. You're not going to see something spawn up without that kind of lineage in there. Most of these politicians have known each other. Most of them have, and it is true that not all of them did, but most of them did, right? And
that's the thing. Like, I love Trump, but Trump knew everybody. So
he did.
It's not like he wasn't connected.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, he knew all.
He was connected in a way that people didn't like.
Yes, and he was open about it. He's like, I always dealt with these people when he was doing real estate. I was like, he knew he was in Clinton's wedding.
He was having parties.
Not weddings. I mean, like anniversary parties and shit. Yeah. It's like, he was already connected with them. The likelihood of
he just flipped the bird of the connection a little bit.
Yes, yeah.
Which is proper in politics, but
the idea of someone like you or me becoming president is like it's really not feasible.
Yeah,
it's not.
You could garner local support.
Yes,
but as far as like a national election, there's no.
There's always connections. Whenever it's the same thing like when you look at Hollywood. When you look at the majority of people there, it's like everybody has been connected.
Is the friend, the daughter, the son of, the friend of the son of.
Yeah, that there's always these deep connections that you just don't spawn in there out of nowhere, and so it's.
This might be why we as a show. I think you and I are like openly like theocratic monarchists essentially.
Yes,
At least monarchy is open in its lineage. Oligarchy is
not
pretends to be something it's not.
Yes. I think the system we have now is just a lie, and
monarchy's not a lie.
Yes, not a
Literally
lie.
like,
Yes.
No, she births you.
Yeah, you have serfs, you have slaves. It's like, that's what it is. We're like,
Yeah.
no, you have employees. So no, we don't have aristocrats. We have business owners. It's like, okay, yes, but they're the same.
I think it's very funny that a bunch of anarchists wanted us to cover their thing that they like when we're like very openly theocrats.
Yeah. Yes,
It's very
yeah.
endearing. I'm glad.
Yes.
I'm glad they like us.
Yeah.
So that kind of leads me to the question. So, do you? I know your answer, but
Yeah.
based on what you've read in this,
Mm-hmm.
which the objection might be it's only a short thing. I don't know in other texts how he could have articulated his arguments regarding the nature of the state. I don't know how he could have elaborated on them because these are so succinct and just like maybe he could have like qualified the arguments better.
Yeah.
But I don't know that any of the arguments he made specifically warrant anarchism as a solution.
Right. Yeah.
Or that there is a solution to the problem. Because he doesn't really offer a solution in the end.
He doesn't. Yes.
He just says that this is a problem.
Yeah.
Which is very accurately and eloquently articulated as a problem.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody could do a better job of articulating the problem of modern government and economics. But like, I don't know. I obviously don't think anarchism is the proper solution.
Right, yes. I don't think it's a proper solution precisely because I don't think it's a description of the social
So anarchists misunderstand human nature.
Yes, big time. And I think they also just, and I don't know, but it
because anarchism to me sounds very Rousseauian.
Yes,
in its assessment of human nature.
It would appear to me that just experience would help them understand what the market actually is. And I think that's really it. I mean, it's like if you really think that the free market is just the exchange of goods and services, it's abundantly clear
so
to
here's
me
the
that,
thing
that,
to
that,
me,
that you just
so
haven't
that
owned
it's
a business.
So it seems to me that anarchists, specifically Rothbard in this, and anarchists more generally that I know, assume that corruption is either a result or byproduct of the state or of trade, rather than the corruption way preexists those.
Yes,
which you and I obviously are of the mind that corruption and evil. I don't want to say that evil exists, but like the privation of the good way preexists the state and trade and whatever.
Yeah, I think, again, I just think that the social power that he describes is also equally as evil as
because it's just licentious. It's just whatever people want.
Yeah, that's all it is.
The idea, what is it? It's just I don't remember exactly where he says it or when or how he says it, but he essentially says that the natural state of man is the production of goods in pursuit of his own wants and desires.
Yes,
which is just not the case.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. The natural state of man is to do what man ought do to manifest his nature as man.
Yes, yeah.
Which is not to do whatever you want, because doing whatever you want has no real correlation with what you ought to do.
It is to will the good for the other.
Should I say my David Bentley Hart quote, even though we're anti-David Bentley Hart? That stupid email is what is it? Is freedom? So what? So the contemporary concept of freedom is, just being able. You are free when you can choose. You just are free when you like. Choice is the ultimate freedom because you have as many options as you want.
Yeah.
What is it? How does Hart say it? I hate that I really like this quote. It's a good lecture.
It is.
He's a good lecturer and a writer.
He is. Yeah.
But he's a cunt. Do I have to bleep that out for YouTube?
I don't think so.
For YouTube?
I don't think that.
Okay, maybe not.
They probably hate him as much as anybody else.
Anyway. It was a very feminine response.
I know.
It's very womanly. Anyway. That's a behind the scenes thing that maybe some people know about. But it's freedom is the ability to attain the ontological good by which one's nature would be manifest. I think is it. So it's essentially you are free when you are free to do what you ought to do.
Yes, yeah.
You are like man is free when man can manifest his nature fully, and there's like one way to manifest your nature. So
Yes.
just doing whatever you want to do is antithetical
Exactly.
to
yeah, yeah.
freedom.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's kind of, especially libertarians don't understand that.
They don't. Yeah.
Or at least,
Because they do equivocate licentiousness with freedom.
yeah, it's like you can't just like, no one can tell you what to do. And it's like, that's not freedom at
Yes,
all. Because the vast majority of things you want to do will enslave you to vice. Like,
Yes. Yeah.
that's what addiction means.
Yes, exactly,
It's like
yeah.
enslavement to a thing.
To be fully free is to do what one ought to do. And,
Yes.
And
Well, just to be able to, just to
Yes,
do
yeah.
it.
Yes.
That's what,
Yeah, but when you actualize it,
whether corporally or externally
it's when
or
you're
whatever.
free.
Yeah.
And so licentious behavior is not freedom. That's just it's enslavement of another.
That's
sort.
the other thing is there, like, what's to say there isn't a state that could ideally, I mean, this could be a utopian argument or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's say there is a state apparatus that is designed to manifest man's nature on earth, and that's what they aim to do. That's good. That there is potential for a good state. You could have it. I mean, human nature obviously would corrupt that in almost any circumstance. I'm just saying that potentially,
the potential
there
can
is a
exist,
state that might operate and do more better than it does evil.
Yes, yeah,
Whatever.
yeah.
So to say, I can't just condemn the state, the idea of a state.
Yes.
Do you think a state? Do you think the states are inevitable?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Depending on how many people you have in it.
Yeah, it's going to be inevitable.
Yeah.
And I really do think that
why is it inevitable? Well, you have to argue why it's inevitable. We have a lot of anarchists listening. Why is the state inevitable?
I think the state is inevitable because if you want to use his terms, the social power is equally as tyrannical. Mm-hmm. And so because it's equally...
The social power without a state.
Yes.
So when he says state power and social power, because I would say that the state power is a social power, but...
Wait, yeah, but I'm just using his term,
okay.
And so like the trades of goods and services...
Is as tyrannical.
Is as tyrannical. Is
and
as
exploitative.
Everything. Yeah. And so I think the state as being the opposition to that is an inevitable reality. Even if its nature is to not offer any goods and service, I agree with him. It's like, that is in its nature, but that's because the city of man is already corrupt. Mm-hmm. And
that corruption even
pre-exists
the city of man. Yeah.
And so that is the nature of the city of man. The city of man is to be corrupt. It is to be coercive. It is to profit. It is to exploit.
It's the evil nature of man.
It's the evil nature of man, exactly. While I think there's one thing that transcends it, and that is the sacrificial nature of what it means to be human at all.
Yeah.
Is to actually love. It is to will the good for the other. Mm-hmm. And that profits nothing. And that profits no one. And that's not going to build you a state that with more corporeal goods and comfort. It's not.
Yeah.
And so unless one is willing to live a life of poverty, unless someone's willing to live a life of love without luxury, the state is always going to exist.
Yeah.
That cannot exist outside. It's the same thing with commerce, the market. The market will always exist. Yeah. It existed prior to Enlightenment, when nobody made swords and shoes and food or whatever. It's like, no, the market has always existed. Yeah. The state has always existed and will continue to exist and is there to distract us from the good. Because we get pleasure from food, we get pleasure from TV, we get pleasure from the internet. Yeah. And so the social powers are there just as much as the state power to distract us from the good, to distract us from what it means to be human. Mm-hmm. And so it is good for them to battle it out. The one thing I don't want to see is them coming together as one tyrannical power. It's like, no, they need to battle out within their own system. And it's going to be there inevitably. And that we can't really escape that.
Because man will, no population will ever be fully Christ-like.
Yes, exactly.
That's not.
It's not possible.
Natural.
Yes. Yes. At least not within the fallen nature.
Yeah. So I mean, there is no potential of that being living in a fallen world or whatever. Yeah. Is there a contra gentiles approved, like stamped? What do we prefer over anarchism? Like, what do we prefer? Do you Something, I think a theme of the show at this point has been that we really enjoy people who speak truth but are also very truthful in articulating their vices.
Yeah.
And I think that there's something about the medieval system, the feudal system, the system of fiefdom, essentially, that is very open in its failure to be complete in its nature as a state.
Yes, yeah.
That I prefer over anything.
Yes.
Or ideally I prefer over, like, I'm not saying that I would forfait what I have now to go live in France in 1258. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm saying just ideologically.
Yeah.
I probably would. Like,
Yeah.
I really think that if I was willing to forfeit all of my sentimental attachments, I would literally go live in a monastery somewhere and not do anything ever again.
It's really ourselves are holding us back for that kind of life.
Yes.
Really,
we both would do that.
Yeah.
But the podcast might be a little weird attempt to try to like reconcile ourselves to the fact that we'll never be able to do that, but like partake of the
a little bit,
the sageness of it a little tiny bit. But
I think that there's a beauty in when I was just reading some of the stories. So there was, I think it was Louis. There's like 6 or 8 King Louis in France. Yeah. So I don't know which one it was. Yeah. But you know, there was like so much stories of how none of them ever thought of themselves as being worthy of heaven. None of them ever thought of themselves as being like an actual good person. Yeah. And they had their life, they had their sins, and they had everything, and then they, in the end, just left it up to the will of God, whatever it may be. And there is that, I guess, just brutal honesty of us realizing that we're a piece of shit. I was talking about one of my friends who went through like AA and everything, and so we were talking about like the people that we don't like to hang out with, right? So we're just ragging on them. Yeah. And so you're always going to meet, no matter which group you're like, Christian or Catholic or whatever, Protestant or Catholic group that you're in, you're always going to meet those group of people that's like, we're just going to hold Bible study together. And they truly believe, because they're not going around snorting coke and fucking everything that moves, that they are worthy enough to articulate truths of the Bible, right? It's like they think I am not a grotesque sinner as these other people. Therefore, I have the like almost authority to be able to hold a Bible study session. And what I say to them, we all dictate to each other what is true. It's like the audacity to that, the prideful nature of that is so disgusting. And so he was telling me, he was like, I would just, wake up coked out, not remember what it was, what I did the night before. He's like, I know I'm a piece of shit. I looked into garbage cans for food, while I was married with 3 kids. It was like, I know I'm a piece of shit. And the one thing I told him was like, and that's why I can talk to you, because you're, Bishop Barron one time said this, and I think it was one of the most like profound lectures he really gave. He said, the difference between a sinner and a saint is that the sinner recognizes his or her own sins, while the sinner believes that what he is doing. Sinner.
So saint.
So the difference between a sinner and a saint is that the saint recognizes his or her own sins, while the sinner believes and justifies their sins, and never really acknowledges what they're doing is wrong. And so when I meet with like some of my really good friends that way, it's like the reason why I am drawn to them is because they're able to simply just say it. It's like I trust a family more when their sins are so out open that I don't have to think about it. The ones who pretend to be the holiest, most prudent families, for me, are
like, what are they hiding?
Yeah, what are you hiding? You are doing something so gross that I don't want to know.
Like, what dungeon do you have?
Yes, yes. Which child of yours are you raping? Yeah. Like, that is literally what comes to my head. Because why are you presenting yourself so pious then? I like the couple when I see them say, I just got to go on there and smoke a cigarette. I got drunk. I did whatever. It's like your vices are so if I want to put the word normal, they're so normal. It's like, I could trust you.
Yeah.
But the one who presents them as so pious and believe that they could dictate the Bible and say that I could hold a Bible study because I am this pious, because I am not doing A, B, and C.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't trust you. And so, yeah, when you look at a society as a whole, when we begin to believe, like when you look at all the presidents, which one of them have been openly degenerate? Honestly.
Trump.
The only one. That's why I love him. He's the only one. But none of them really were.
Horse face and
Like,
two-bit
yes.
lawyer.
Like, everything was always hidden. Like, everybody knew that. What was the guy who fucked Marilyn Monroe?
JFK.
Yeah, everybody knew that JFK was like fucking people, but it was all hidden. It was like, I don't like that. You know what I like? I like how the medieval people had literally hierarchies of the mistresses.
They take them to each event.
Literally,
Wait,
yes.
what was the...
Like the title in France was chief mistress.
That's one of the beautiful...
So they had the queen, they had the chief mistress, and they had the secondary ones. Like, I prefer that. You know, I don't want the JFK pretending to be prudent. I want the Donald Trump that be like, yeah, she has a fucking horse face. You know?
That was the beautiful thing about when I did a little deep dive into the death of Mussolini. I really think we should cover some kind of like writing by Mussolini or like a fascist thing. Maybe Gentile or something.
Yeah.
We should cover something like overtly fascist.
Yes.
See if we agree with it or not.
I hope you do agreeing too much.
No, I mean the Nazi thing wasn't fascist.
Yeah, I know.
Overtly.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
You know, but that's a low shelf take. But
Yeah.
when they killed Mussolini, they shot him in a garden with his mistress. They hung him up upside down from a gas station, and his body was stoned for days with his mistress. His wife wasn't killed.
That's beautiful.
I know.
Yes.
It's so Italian.
It's so Italian.
It's so Italian.
It's so like that Catholic world.
Yes.
It's like I love that.
Yeah.
Like, I like the openness of the vices and sins. I don't like the pretending that one is so holy and virtuous that.
And I feel
you have
like
nothing
that
else.
this piece by Rothbard has a little bit of that.
It does, definitely. Has a lot of bit of that, I think.
Which is very American. Like you
Yes.
can't blame him because he's literally grown up in an American milieu of post-Marxist economists.
Yep.
So the fact that it feels very Marxist to me and also is
Puritanical,
very Puritan, or it's very Rousseauian in its conception of human nature.
Well, Rousseau was a pietist, and so that's just French and the other side of the Puritans. They're literally the
literally,
identical.
yes, yeah. That's what I mean. It's just it's kind of like that. If man uncorrupted is just good and benevolent is just wrong.
Yeah, I know. Like I like the Trumps of the world. It's like, yes, where he's divorced like twice, and then married this hot chick
from Slovenia.
Something. Yes. And that has an autistic son. I was like, this is beautiful. Man.
Is he autistic?
I don't know.
He has to be.
He looks
Isn't
like
he
it all the
6'7" or something.
Yeah. Like, this is magnificent.
Yeah.
This is what I like. Not this pretending. Like, everybody knows Joe Biden killed his first wife. Like Joe Biden was his babysitter. You're telling me that he wasn't fucking her already? And then mysteriously she got into a car crash. Give me a break, all right? Give me a fucking break. You're a fucking Joe this whole time. Just be open, man.
She's
Just
a
be
doctor.
out.
She's a doctor.
Yeah, Dr. Joe Biden.
Dr. Joe Biden.
Fuck. You know, it's like, fuck it. All this bullshit I hate is like, just be open with it.
That's why South American politics are so chaotic but so beautiful.
Yeah, I know. Yes. Yeah.
Are you a Pinochet fan?
Pinochet. Yeah.
Beautiful man.
Anthem, like Pinochet.
It's a beautiful man.
It is, yeah.
That's what we should do. We're gonna have so we're having my sister make garb already. We should have a fashion designer make uniforms for the podcast. To be in thematic with the next thing we're doing. But anyway, do you have anything else to say?
No. It was interesting. Like,
but you did like a lot of it.
I did, yeah. I liked reading it because there was actual things
arguments,
said.
And his critique was correct.
Yeah,
largely in the same way that Marx's critique was correct.
Yes, exactly. Yes,
but his praxis was
wildly
off.
Yes, it was dumb. Yeah, I was like, his critique of what the state is a much better comprehension of the state than the idea that we are the government or whatever.
Yeah.
The phrase they use. Is much better than like the Lockean and Hobbesian.
Well, it's a very good critique of especially the contemporary American system of government.
But his comprehension of the free market, his comprehension of what he calls the social power, is just silly. It's like you really think that human beings are just that good. It's like, okay, either
the state is the only corrupting force.
Yes, you're being deliberately ignorant. You have never met another human being, and you have never run a business. Because if you know how bloodthirsty, business is just brutal.
Yeah, but it's voluntary.
It's voluntary.
Everybody owns a business is voluntarily.
Yes. But they also realize that they're there to make money.
Yeah.
It's like, that is my bottom line, that if this is not going to produce me money, I'm going to do something else that will produce me money. Mm-hmm. But to think that you're just giving goods and services for the other goods and services is stupid. It's like, no, it is for the production of wealth. That's what it is. And it is true.
You don't want equal exchange of goods. You want more than
you
what
want
you're putting
more.
into
Exactly.
it.
Yes.
Yeah. And everybody wants more.
You want to make more than your workers. You want to exploit your workers for your own personal gain. That is
which a lot of the time benefits the workers because they're getting paid.
Again, it does benefit them.
They should ideally be being paid well.
But as Marx says, I think very accurately, it also causes a disparity. Mm-hmm. And to ignore the disparity is ridiculous. It's like, no, there does cause a disparity. The wealthier this country gets, the more disparity there is between the workers and the business owners. First they were able to afford their own fucking islands, like literally. And then they're able to go into space, literally. Right? I think they said, what's his name? The Tesla dude?
Elon Musk.
Yeah, I think.
I almost called him Tesla Musk.
I think last year he launched like 27 rockets to space.
Well, SpaceX, yeah.
Yes.
I know someone that works for SpaceX.
Do you? Yes.
As an engineer.
That's how wealthy he is. All right? 100
What's
years
the difference
ago,
between him and a king?
Yes. Yeah. There isn't any. He exploits just as much. He doesn't give a shit. What his workers get paid, he can walk away with the biggest profit. So you create more disparity. You do create more wealth, but to say that the function of the wealth creator is for the trades of goods and services and like a mutual experience, it isn't. It is like they want to fuck you over. They want to get as much money out of you as possible with the least amount of effort as possible.
Well, and it's also a person's responsibility to understand that and to play that.
Yeah. But for his description of it, it was like he's not.
It is very utopian.
Yes, he's being silly.
Yeah.
It's like that's not the case. And the one thing like if I would talk to him in person, it was like, start a business. Yeah. Trust me, just start a business. That's all you got to do. You got to experience what it's like. You have to know what it's like to be out for profit. You have to know what it's like to sacrifice an entire chunk of your wealth for the production of more wealth, and then know what it's like to like pay somebody to give you more wealth. Not to give them the same amount of money you're making, but less than what you were making, because you want more wealth. And then you'll realize, oh no, I'm here for profit. I'm here because this is producing something, and the production of it is giving me more and more and more, and I'm going to exploit as much as possible. If some little immigrant comes in and I could only have to pay him like $5 an hour, I'm going to fucking do it. Mm-hmm. That is the way the business works, because it is there for profit. It is not there for mutual exchange. It is there to convince you that the profit is worth buying, and that to convince you to give them the money for this profit.
And I think that any intuitively correct person knows that about business. And I think that that's actually, it really, when you said that this is like the other half of Marx.
Yeah.
That's true, because Marx said a lot of criticizing what you're talking about.
Yes. Yeah.
And then Rothbard fleshes out the state in a way. Yeah. Like they're both.
Yeah. And I think these two tensions need to exist in the city of man. It just needs to exist. We want that tension to exist. We don't want them to becoming one. We don't want,
because that's literally what we're seeing.
That's tyranny. Because the moment they become one,
because those two forces will always exist.
Yes.
There will always be a ruling class exerting influence over a population.
Yes.
There will always be a population struggling against it.
Yes, yeah. And you want that struggle to continuously exist all the time.
Because if it doesn't, then there's tyranny.
Yes. You want the disparity. You don't want people making the same amount of money. No, you want that disparity. You want that struggle. You want all of that, because that's what keeps it in checks and balances.
That was the check and balance. It wasn't. So the new check and balances are just stupid.
It's stupid. Yes. Yeah.
They literally just legitimize themselves, as we talked about earlier.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
describes well with like the Supreme Court stuff.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah, which is accurate. Yeah, it just legitimizes itself. But you want the separation. You want that struggle, and they should always be out for blood.
Yeah.
You want both of them to be out for as much money and profit as possible to exploit whatever they can.
You can exploit
together.
the state. You can exploit the state. Will exploit you.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Keep it in balance.
Yep.
All right. Is that it?
Yep.
Okay. Bye.